Hello everyone, this is Snack. It's been a while, but we are here on the Crow's Nest channel. So today I am just going to discuss some things about the Edison meta. I know a lot of people kind of want to know what they're getting into. There's a video on the channel where I describe a lot of the popular decks and how they play. So if you're interested in like what on a turn-by-turn basis, what's going on, how fast is it, what monsters are important, all that kind of stuff, you can go check that video out. I talk about, I think, 12 different decks, so definitely check that out. But if you're just looking for, okay, I know what the decks are, which ones are dominating, which ones should I expect to see at my locals if they have an Edison event, that's what this video is going to be. And I'll have some general discussion about what's going on in Edison. So I prepared this chart. This chart is referencing Format Libraries tournaments. The two Deck Devastators tournaments were run in the Edison Format Discord. I was a big part of throwing those, along with Fen and Spiral and Aras and some others. But anyways, you've also got the RBET tournaments. Those are run by Keegan of the E3 channel, and the Pumpkin of Games are also run by Keegan. So these charts are just based on 2022 tournament results. And I've got two charts because this tournament only had 53 entrants and this one only had 79. So I have a chart that this one is if you include those smaller tournaments, and this one is if you only do the tournaments of at least 100 people. Also, I didn't include Rivet Rulers because it's harder to get data on that, and it's an invitational, so the meta's a little bit different, but I'll be discussing things that come up from implications that happened at Rulers. Anyways, long intro. Let's get into it. You can see from this chart, hopefully it's not too small, this big chunk right here is blackwings. They represent about 20% of the meta at the top levels. So blackwings are definitely a huge force to be reckoned with at the more competitive Edison level. You're gonna run into them. They are a very strong deck, and they're also very popular right now. As you can see, the next most represented is Zombies, followed by Value Turbo, which is a different kind of blackwing deck. It's really fairly different, but it's runs around Blackwing, Value, and Sirocco. Then frog decks, that is a bunch of different decks, but the main thing is frogs. Lightsworn, both of these have 5. And then Diva Hero, Gemini Hero, these both have 3. And lately these decks have been like kind of merging, the lines between the two is blurring. So you could just put this in a big hero chunk and say hero decks have 6 tops. And then 3 for dragons, 3 for glads, 3 for quick draw, 1 fairy, 1 machina, 1 amaryllis, and 1 chaos. Lots of different decks. As you can see, there's lots of diversity in this meta. One thing is, even though fairy only has 1 top, it was by Pro Storm, and that was at, was it Ribbit 1? Yes, here it is. Pro Storm's fairy deck. Let's just take a look at it. This is the one from RBET 1. This is the only top that shows up on here, but he actually just won Rivet Rulers, which was the invitational of all the people who had topped in RBET before. And he faced 4 straight tournament winners in his first 4 matches, and then won against Indicated in finals. So I think Fairy's a little bit underrepresented, but it's a very skill-intensive deck. So I think even among top players, it would be very difficult for them all to pilot it to the level that Pro Storm does. But one reason that he liked it is because he thought it had a good matchup, especially the way he built it. He thought it had a good matchup against Blackwing decks, which, as you can see, is a big chunk. I personally also think that Machina decks could represent more of the meta than just 1.8%. One thing that's a little bit hidden by this pie chart is that a lot of these decks, I group them together so that you can understand like what's running the meta. But within these chunks, there's different builds. So for blackwings, you often have the really aggressive, we're playing Dark Gaia, we're playing multiple value, and we're not playing that many traps. Or you have a list like the one that R is topped with and the one that TH50 topped with, where they're playing the more standard, no gruffer, but they are often playing Cyber Dragon, but they're playing a heavier trap lineup, that kind of a more of a control grindy type. So there's basically two ways to play blackwings right now. Zombies. Some of these, I know Xeris threw in some Lightsworn cards, just a few. Almost all of these are Diva zombies. One of them was actually, I think, Psychic zombies or Welladad. So zombies with Crepons, Emergency Teleport, and Telekinetic Power Well. And Silchus sort of pioneered a deck that was zombies with Diva and also the Hero Engine. And the benefit of that is that you get to play Future Fusion as another copy of Foolish Burial. You can send Mizuki by revealing Dark Gaia, or you can send Mali. Yeah, another thing that the Hero Engine benefits in the zombie deck is that your double level 6 synchro play can OTK from 8,000 if you have the Mali, because it allows you to make Colossal Fighter as well, which is like exactly 8,000, I think. Vayu doesn't have as much like different types of decks within it. Most of the decks are playing something similar to what James's list was from the beginning of the year. So he spent many years fine-tuning that deck, and it still is keeping up, which is impressive. Frogs, you get Diva Frogs, which Ronok won this RBCT with. You also have Hero Frogs, which can be built multiple ways. RBET2, Cameron and Ronok, both topped with Hero Frogs, and they're playing like an earlier build, whereas now when people are topping with Hero Frogs, like when Guari won, they tend to not even be playing Mali, and they'll play, well actually, let's look at this deck. So, yeah, this deck is playing 3 Malicious Edge and 2 Infernal Prodigy with Junk Synchron. The main advantage of this deck as a frog deck is that you get to play Miracle Fusion, which lets you summon twice on your turn rather than just being locked into your one normal. I think that's like something that you have to be really conscious of with Diva Frogs, is that you're really limited to that one normal. So it takes a lot of skill, I think, to pilot that version. And then you have all these other decks. Like I said, Diva Hero and Gemini Hero, you can sort of be anywhere on the spectrum between, you know, we're not playing Diva, or we're just playing Alias and Ocean, or we're playing Alias and we're playing Diva with Gilman, and then we're playing Alias, Diva, Gilman, and Mali, and then when you get to Diva Hero, you can be, we're playing Diva Hero with 1 Alias, or just Diva Hero with 0 Alias, more of a like old school Celtics list. So anywhere on that spectrum. One thing that we've noticed is the more standard Diva Hero lists are becoming less popular. Toward the beginning of the year, they were topping more, but one of the ones in here that I classified as Diva Hero was just, it was playing 3 Alias and maybe 3 Gemini Spark, but it had the Mali Diva, so that one was like difficult to classify. And then I think one of these might be Carpath's deck, which had the Neospatians in it, which is like a turbo Diva Hero deck. That one's really cool, but the more standard deck is not as popular as it used to be, because I think a lot of the strengths of that deck are maybe even stronger in the Hero Zombie deck. In terms of dragons, there's 2 types that have topped. There's the Dragon Turbo list, and then there's also Dark Dragons, which topped RBET1. And that's a crazy list. Let's see. That list is playing Dark Horus, Phantom of Chaos, Norlaris, Dark Creator, just crazy. No traps, just going absolutely nuts. Very interesting deck. And when you have Future Fusion in that deck, it's nuts. Quick Draw, I think one of these Quick Draw decks is a Quick Draw Volcanic deck, and the other two are more like trap heavy Quick Draw lists, whereas the Volcanic one plays Royal Decree. The Glads have a lot of diversity within them. Some of them are playing Cat, some of them are playing Prisma. I think some of them are playing none of that. They're just playing like the bare bones Glads. So there's even more diversity than it appears here. And there's a lot of decks that haven't topped, but I think could easily top. I think X-Sabers could top a tournament. I think KFC, the Kuraz deck that Carpath pioneered, could absolutely top. That deck is strong. So there's still stuff to be explored, but here's the meta. And I wanted to talk about what is it about the Blackwing deck that makes it so dominant. So let's find a Blackwing list. So here's the Blackwing list from by TH50 from Deck Dev 2. And this is like more of a standard Blackwing deck. And I think what makes this deck so strong in Edison format is life points really matter. That might not be the case in some later formats, but in Edison, you can clock people so fast with Blackwings using Bora, especially with Bora and Sirocco. These monsters are so good at swarming the field with Gale, Bora. This one plays Cyber Dragon. I think that's another way of clocking. When Shura runs something over it, special summons something to the field. Kalute can just hit lethal. And being able to put your opponent at a life point disadvantage early means that in the later game, you can make a card like Brionac so easily. And that card is just great for pushing for lethal. It's like absolutely nuts. Just having those Brio game shots open almost all the time makes this deck extremely strong. And then on top of that, it has synergy because it has dark monsters. So you get to play Dad, which is basically the best card in the entire format. If you notice, these top 3 decks all play Dad. So you get to play Dad, you get to play Allure of Darkness, you get to play Dark Eruption, which is just a random card. You can play Deck Devastation Virus, you can play Dark End Dragon. Tons of synergies that you get just by Blackwings being dark. And that's what the whole Vayu deck is built around. But a different take on Blackwings is this hyper-aggressive deck. This one's really interesting. I think the Noblemans are cool because I was thinking about it, and especially if you're not playing Deep Prison or Bottomless, you can just hit your opponents, and then now they have like no ways of stopping you. If you can banish like a Bottomless and banish the other one from their deck, it's like you don't have to fear the back row as much. If you hit a Deep Prison, same thing. I think this could be weak, just having 4 forms of back row. If you run into a deck like Lightsworn or Frogs, this could bite you having a bunch of dead cards, but clearly it worked out for Luigi. So really interesting. This deck really takes what I was saying to another level where it really swarms. We're playing every way to get to summoning a bunch of Blackwings on the field and clocking the opponent before they can do anything. Since Edison is a slower format, a lot of the decks are built to take a few turns to set up and draw into the cards that they need. Whereas Blackwings are just kind of saying, I'm going to kill you before you get a chance to draw the cards that you need so that they can work together. You don't have that much time. Zombies are an interesting deck where I think their strength comes from the fact that they were completely busted before the Edison ban list. And they tried to hit them in terms of consistency, but being able to search everything with Goblin Zombie means it barely matters. It's almost like a modern deck. Like, we don't need to draw our extenders. We search them out every single time. And that's another, like, as I was saying earlier, it's like kind of an OTK deck. They can kill you out of nowhere. You never know when you're safe. And back row doesn't matter because they're just going to bounce it to your hand. You have to have chainable back row in the form of like Compulse or Icarus Attack, which is a reason why Blackwings are so good. Another deck that I think isn't on this chart that could be is the Evil Hero deck. Let me find one. So here's an example of the Evil Hero Dark Gaia deck. It's a really interesting way of doing it with the Prismas. The Prismas are able to send your rock monsters, your big piece golem by revealing a fusion. You've got Malicious Edge, which can also be sent straight to the grave, I think, which is a big fiend. Really interesting deck. The Dark Calling, Miracle Fusion. You can play Ab-Zero and Dark Gaia in this deck, so some really interesting stuff. I think this deck hasn't hit its ceiling yet. Those are some decks that I'd like to see in 2023. I expect that the Diva Hero is actually going to continue to go down. I think Fairy will see more representation in the future, and I think Machina will see more representation in the future. I think both of these decks actually have a really good matchup against blackwings. One thing that blackwings are able to beat people with is Icarus attack, and the nice thing about the Machina deck is that they're able to summon a monster that can contest a blackwing in battle, but it doesn't require them to put 2 cards on the field. So, for example, let's look at a Machina list. You can summon Fortress straight from your hand by pitching, in this case, I guess a card like Peacekeeper, or you can summon it from the grave with a card like Fortress. And that just puts a big beater on the field that can run over a blackwing without needing to like synchro summon. Whereas a deck like Zombies, if they're going to get over a blackwing, they have to climb into it by summoning monsters on the field, and that leaves them open to Icarus at any time. Whereas with Machina, you just summon the guy, and then they can't even collude over him, because if they do, you pop something on their field. So really, really strong. I think this deck has a great matchup against blackwings. The main problem with this deck is dealing with floaters and sometimes set monsters. But decks like Zombies with the Battle Recruiters or Fairy, I think this deck it really struggles with that. Quick Draw, it can have problems with Dandelion and pushing through. You notice that ×2 is playing the 2 DD Warrior Ladies for that reason. And also you have the Rykos to pop those Recruiters, as well as probably back row. Something that I was playing in my Machina list was Ryo, because since the deck has trouble with Cyber Dragon, you can just summon a Ryo next to your Fortress, and then they can't. You're just trading 1-for-1 with their side draw, which is supposed to be their blowout card. And Ryo's just a good normal summon that can pressure the opponent. I like having Caius in here. So many people were playing gadgets in Machina because it seems like it has the synergy, but the gadgets just don't do enough on their own. Whereas you can play all these supplementary cards, tech choices that really address the weaknesses of the deck so that you can build a really well-rounded deck. And when you're milling cards with Ryko and Card Trooper, you're able to play the Avarice, which gives you a better grind game. So really good take on the deck, I think. I think that will show some improvement in 2023 in terms of representation. Keegan's Trap Dragons, which is also playing Warrior Lady for similar reasons, might also see some play, whereas the 3 dragons that we had in 2022 were all more of like a turbo combo type deck rather than this like aggro control like back row deck. That is pretty much everything. If you're interested in like a more modern tier list, I think Carpath recently published his like updated tier list at the end of 2022. So I'll put a link to that video in the description, and make sure to like and subscribe on this channel. We're trying to get some subscribers so that we can unlock some YouTube features. Anyways, I'll try to be back again sooner than I was this time, and I'll see you later. Adios.